Hello, everyone. Yes, I believe we're live now. Thank you all for attending today. We are going to be running through our webinar, which is hosted by Wiise and Caroline from KPMG Australia. And really this webinar is about building resilience in your supply chain. And we know that so much has happened today with COVID and what that means for Australian businesses, but we're hoping to, take you guys through bit more detail around what this means for businesses today, what they need to think about for tomorrow, and ways that in which Wiise has been able to really help these supply chain businesses navigate. I'd like to introduce ourselves. And also, just as a bit of a housekeeping, there is a place that you can pop in any questions that you might have during the presentation. Feel free to do so. We will try and get to them during the preso, but if we don't, we will hopefully have some time at the end to do a bit of a Q&A. If not, we will reach out to you guys at the end and make sure that all your answers, all your questions are answered. All right, and so here we are, myself, Maya. I'm Product Marketing Lead here at Wiise, here to help sort of facilitate the discussion. We have Caroline Faulkner as well. She's Solutions Architect at KPMG Australia. Might just show you guys what we all look like.
Thanks,
Caroline.
Maya. It's really nice to be here and to see you guys in real life after so long.
Oh, definitely. So we're all actually in the office, but we are socially distancing, which is great. But it is weird. It's very weird. And we also have Christopher Mackenzie. He is our go-to for all things Wiise and has worked with a lot of businesses around their processes and what that looks like when it comes from a technological standpoint. So, hey, Chris.
Hey, Maya. Hey, Caroline. Thanks very much for inviting me today. I'm looking forward to talking with you all and talking a bit about Wiise and wholesale distribution.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Excellent. So we'll just sort of cover a bit of the agenda today, just so you all know what we'll be discussing. Essentially, one of the key things that we want to chat to you all about is really the impact of COVID on supply chains within Australia. There's a lot that has happened, in the last 6 months, and hopefully things are looking better as we move into 2021, but it's really insightful. I think it's shown some of the things that, businesses need to think about today when it comes to their operations, their finances, and helping future-proof those businesses into the future. We'll then talk about what businesses, wholesale distribution, manufacturing, any of those that really manage a supply chain need to think about today. So with everything that's happened, what are some of those more important things that those businesses need to look into? And, Caroline will sort of hone in on that. She's very experienced and has over 20 years experience in the supply chain industry, working with a lot of businesses on their processes and also their infrastructure. So we'll be able to get some great insights from herself. And then we'll talk a little bit about Wiise, who we are, what do we do, and how we're helping businesses in the current climate navigate. There's some really great success stories that we've seen with our customers, and it's all around how they've been able to really leverage technology, specifically cloud ERP, to navigate during a time where things are so volatile. Chris will then jump into a great demo where he'll show, what supply chain planning looks like within Wiise, warehouse management, and some of the ways that these processes will streamline a lot of the work for any type of business that might have labour-intensive or manual processes, which we're excited to see. And then hopefully we'll have some time to go through a bit more information around, what our pricing looks like, the setup package options that we have, and at the end, a bit of a Q&A. So that's pretty much the agenda for today. I guess, Caroline, it's all about, COVID is the number one thing that we've been speaking about for the last, 6 months or so. How has COVID impacted the supply chain industry within Australia? Give us a bit of a lowdown.
Yeah, look, it's been huge. We saw huge shifts in consumer choices since March this year, what we bought, where we bought it, and how much we thought we needed to buy. Consumers were restricted in where they could go to shop, so online shopping became the norm. and what we were buying changed. You know, we saw in the last 6 months, although some toiletries were flying off the shelf, like soap and of course toilet paper, others just weren't moving as fast, like deodorant and sun cream. So when everyone was working from home as well, we saw we needed to stock up on colouring pencils. So those businesses had great boosts in demand. When we were allowed to move around a bit more, we were all focusing on recreational activities. So outdoor equipment was in really high demand. Then of course, where we were buying all those products from was really important for distributors and manufacturers, because places like beauty salons and hairdressers were closed. So suppliers of those businesses needed to find alternative ways of reaching their end consumers. How they did that, online sales, and that was something that businesses really needed to prioritise. And we saw, KPMG, we saw a big interest in moving to those simple to use online platforms like Shopify, and that really helped those businesses keep their income turning over, which was really important, because many of those businesses didn't have those huge cash stores to keep them going in the long term.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, we think about some of our customers who had a heavy reliance on vendor-to-vendor relationships, where they would distribute products to, for example, if they're a coffee distributor, and they would distribute to cafes across, you know, Australia, and all of a sudden everyone was working from home, nobody was going into cafes, and so it's a big shift. It's all of a sudden trying to figure out how do you navigate based on that customer demand change to continue selling your product and continue being in business. I guess the other thing, Caroline, and we've all, you know, experienced this whole thing, but it's around remote working and what that meant for businesses that might have not been like us here at Wiise, where we were easily able to, you know, switch the way that we work, and we all started working from home. We had the right tools like Microsoft Teams and so forth to be able to really navigate in that, in, you know, the sort of environment that we were working in. How are those businesses sort of, you know, dealing with that aspect?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, those in the wholesale trade, they have kind of a medium capacity to work from home, because you've got your admin staff and they needed to be able to access their work remotely, because, you know, in some cases they couldn't go into the office, there just wasn't the space to allow it. But then you've got your warehouse and manufacturing staff who really needed to be in the building to keep the business going. And they needed to reduce the contact points between staff members. So, you know, double handling of paper just had to stop. But yeah, certainly we saw a big uptake in collaborative products like Teams and things like that lots of our clients were starting to use to try and, you know, keep that connection going even when you couldn't be together in real life. And then, of course, you know, one of the great things that helped keep these businesses going was JobKeeper and some of the incentives that the governments were offering, and that allowed them to keep their staff at a time that was so stressful for everybody. Those that could keep their teams together, in some instances, had to look at how much space they had in their offices physically, and figure out whether they could keep going with a smaller workforce. So how do you become more efficient when you've got fewer people doing the work? I mean, many of our clients have, you know, lots of warehouse or manufacturing space, so they were able to keep their warehouse and manufacturing staff on site whilst maintaining that physical distance, which is really good.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other factor that we probably have heard quite often is cost of sale. You know, I think that's something that has been probably maybe one of the biggest impacts to distribution and manufacturers in Australia. What have you heard from, you know, clients or other businesses that you've been consulting with around the increase in costs and what that looked like?
Yeah, like you said, I mean, these businesses in this industry of manufacturing and distribution, they do rely so much on other businesses. So if if those coffee shops aren't open, then the supply of the coffee is reduced in demand. And the other impacts we saw were things like we didn't have domestic and international flights, so freight didn't have that same quick access to cheap transport, and therefore freight costs went up, and we saw delays in that as well. So that had an impact down the line on profitability. Raw materials weren't as available, so that there are issues on supplying those industries, and it is implied in that supply chain concept, but it's one of those things that we see those impacts down the line because of those costs. And then, of course, like I just said, with those freight issues, the delays on the goods coming in had a big impact. So people needed to either delay their deliveries to their customers or look for alternate vendors that were closer. And that was kind of like another stress on top of all of the worries about, your actual keeping your staff and the actual virus. All of those things were causing lots and lots of stress on all of these businesses.
Yeah, it's and to that point as well, I think about, there's some sort of alarm going on. I think about the disruption that this has caused. Our entire supply chain in Australia is so massive that consumers, I believe, are a lot more conscious as to where they buy things from. Yeah. I know with me, for example, just seeing how much reliance we do have on international trade now makes me think, should we be supporting more Australian-made goods, or how do we actually help boost our side of the fence so that we don't have something like this happen again? And it's insane. You never realise how much international trade gives us everything that we have here until something like this, which no one could see coming, happen. So definitely.
And that's that thing of being prepared for when it may happen again. That businesses put those strategies in play to actually be able to cater for this if and when it happens again.
Yeah, excellent. So I guess, maybe the next slide is probably helpful to go into, but how have businesses in Australia been able to pivot during this time? What were some of the key things that you've seen?
Yeah, like I said before, selling online was huge. So that big uptake in e-commerce platforms really gave people access to the end consumer, and trying to do that without harming the relationship with your traditional conduit, so with your traditional retailers, was really hard to do, but something that a lot of the clients that I work with did really successfully, and it just meant that they could still get their product out there without having a physical location for their end consumers to go to. Diversification, that was key. Not just being able to increase your stock levels because demand had increased on particular products. Like I said before, stationery was pretty massive. Everybody needed some highlighters, colouring pencils. Everyone was spending time doing mindfulness exercises, so it was all, it was really, really big. So being able to increase demand, but then also being able to find new products to sell. One of the great examples was Stage Kings, who did, event production. They used to build stages, but there were no events. So they went to building office furniture for your home, and that was huge. The number of people that I know who got one of those desks was amazing.
Yeah.
And then, also, finding new vendors. We didn't have access to those interstate partners that we were used to. So we, our clients had to look for local vendors, and those opportunities for those relationships to grow was a really positive thing, and I think will help in the future to kind of dampen the effects if we see something like this again, is having those new relationships with new vendors.
Yeah, definitely. And I know to that point, those businesses that were able to pivot so quickly, they would have had the ability to do so. I'm hoping they would have had the right technology in place to be able to do that. But even things like, some of our other customers that we've spoken to who sold into schools where, schools suddenly shut down and then uniforms and things like that weren't needed, and so they pivoted their strategy to say, okay, well, how about we create packets, packaging for school kids at home to help their parents, give them things to do while they're trying to work from home and have the children in the same space, which is, incredible to see how flexible a business can be when, they think about, okay, this is what we have, what can we do more. So
Yeah,
I guess
absolutely.
the other caveat, for those that have been able to pivot so quickly are those that pretty much were, I say left behind, but in terms of, were struggling to keep up as quickly as those that might have had their infrastructure sorted or might have had the tools and resources to be able to pivot quite quickly. Some of the discussions that you've had with clients or even other businesses, I guess, what are some of the things that they've been well, pretty much this slide will tell us this because we've spoken to these businesses, but I guess, can you take us through the key things that we've seen from those businesses today?
Yeah, certainly. So, even just the visibility, people working on spreadsheets or multiple systems that weren't integrated, it made it really difficult to see the impacts of those things that we've just been talking about in terms of freight costs or, new vendors that could supply faster but at a higher price. If it takes weeks to prepare those new forecasts, it's just too slow in an environment like this, and it has such a big impact on the profitability of the business down the line. So, they couldn't, the ones that didn't have those systems set up, they couldn't just run a function to update their production orders with that updated cost of an item to ensure that they were recalculating based on the true cost. Or, you think about how those production orders were set and when. We had production orders that were set in, November last year, and were in for production in March. The difference in cost of those items in that time would have been quite significant. So if you didn't have the ability to run the function to update the costs and see those true costs, it would have made it really hard to have a true understanding of your inventory, and then down the line, like I said before, that profitability on the sales end. And that working remotely, a lot of businesses didn't have that IT infrastructure to work remotely. Their accounting system was on premise, or the staff didn't have easy access to work remotely. There was those relying still on paper for their processes, for approvals, for purchase orders, and that meant that their staff had to be in the office or the work just didn't get done. So there was that kind of inability to be able to work remotely in an efficient way. Operating costs, like we've said before, had to be reduced. Some of them came into staff salary reductions. I know lots and lots of people who have experienced that, and some businesses didn't have that data intelligence and those insights to make those informed decisions. So that saw them kind of make those decisions over and over again, but late, not in a really timely manner.
Yeah, and I think even, things around the delay in shipments coming into the country and how, you want to keep your customers happy because you need your customers, you need to make sales. And so that impact as well, is there an example of, maybe from some of the clients that you've spoken to around, was this a common impact?
Yeah, it certainly was. That delay in supply was big. And that links to what we were talking about before with the visibility. So not being able to see those, the impacts on the future plans or those changes in demand. And that meant that they fell short on production materials. So not having those raw materials to make what they needed. And they didn't have that ability to easily go to their purchase orders and change the expected receipt dates and see what that impact would be on their production schedule. So it had a big impact. So the other thing that all of these things come into play with is cash flow. They couldn't see what was ahead without something like Chris will show a bit of, being able to adjust quickly in terms of things like payment terms, both on the AP and the AR side. You know, what would the impacts be if you allowed your customer to have a longer payment term? Or on the flip side, what would the impact be if your vendors were offering extended payment terms? You know, being able to do that quickly within your system helps you make those informed decisions a lot quicker.
Definitely. I guess all of this has given us a bunch of different learnings, and look, I think, you know, with the bad, there's, you know, good, I'm going to say, but I think this is now giving organisations a realisation as to how important it is to set your foundation up right, not only in terms of your infrastructure, but even with the right talent, having the right people to be able to quickly pivot, you know, maintain that flexibility. So Caroline, can you take us through the 6 key things that organisations in supply chain should be thinking about today?
Yeah. I mean, being able to pivot quickly, we saw that was key. Adapting to online models of selling, or the ability to change your product range, and being able to, you know, set your inventory up in the warehouse in a way that that allows for quick adjustments in your accounting system. Being flexible with your vendors, ensuring that you foster those relationships, that's been shown to be really effective, and kind of not just working on price reductions with them, but prioritising growth and innovation and risk management, because we've seen this now, and it can happen again. So maintaining those relationships, really important. Being able to work remotely, and that will continue to be important. It's not as though we're all going to go back into the office in the next 6 months and stay there working full time. It's not going to happen. So teaching your employees how to effectively leverage, you know, cloud office technology, and not being tied down to outdated systems that restrict you from adapting. And this will help not just in times of crisis, but helping your business kind of continue to shift, and allowing your employees to adapt and change, so that you're offering a better service to your customers. Analytics, it's going to be key. Helping businesses make informed decisions faster, and allowing them to see clearly that supply all the way through. So what is the impact of what happens over here if my raw materials are slow? What is that impact all the way down to my customer? And being able to adapt with that, being able to see your cash flow in really clearly, and ensure that you know where the business is today, not 2 weeks ago. You know, one of the other things actually we saw when the businesses were quiet, there was that little period where people were just trying to figure out they couldn't really do their normal business, but they were trying to figure out what they were doing, and it was really quiet. We saw a spike in staff looking for efficiency gains, so looking to automate or process or streamline a task. And it was really encouraging to see that in our clients, that the staff were actively looking for ways to improve things and keep the business going. It was really cool. I really liked it.
It's crazy, because I mean, automation has been a word that has, I'd say, been around for, you know, a few years now, but no one really understands what that means. And we always think automation means a robot comes in and takes my job, but some of the ways, I think what this is given businesses is a way to analyze how their time is being spent and where they can gain those efficiencies. And it is simple things like, how long does it take for you to actually do a sales order? You know, does it take you an hour? Does it take you 15 minutes? And how long does it take for you to do those everyday tasks and your team, that you can actually cut back? It doesn't need to take an hour to get a, you know, sales order out. It can take 15 minutes, and technology is definitely a way to be able to leverage that to streamline a lot of that. So And what about, I think the biggest thing is when you don't have that visibility, so if you don't, obviously you can't get the right data out of your system in a timely manner, takes the team a long time to report into you, whether it's on your, here's what the inventory and stock take looks like today versus here's what the P&L looks like across all of our product suite. But what has that meant for, when it comes to your costs and inventory and how important that is to be able to navigate into the future?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, inventory costs are so significant even when you're running a lean environment. So any changes to this, be it because of freight or importing costs or changes to suppliers, it needs to be really clearly visible, especially to those decision makers, so that they can see what effects they have and take them into account. So having up-to-date reporting and staying informed on those changes to inventory costs, like Chris will take you through a little bit later, so significant, and Wiise is really strong on that to be able to keep you on track with inventory costing especially.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. That was fantastic. We did want to include this slide as well for anyone that is looking at digital transformation, and that's another term that gets thrown around quite a lot, but what I think is important to note is the fact that the government is heavily investing in this space now. They've always invested and had grants and funds in the past, but what we're seeing is there's a lot more available to supply chain businesses, whether you're a manufacturer or wholesale distributor. So if cost is an issue when it comes to looking at your infrastructure and wanting to, look at technology and ways to automate, there are funds and grants available out there for you that you can definitely have a look at. And so we wanted to include a quick slide just for you guys to have a look at, because it's there, and is the time now? That's the other question, and I think what we're seeing to date, it might be, but awesome. Thanks, Caroline. Chris, so do you want to give us a little bit about Wiise and tell us, what we do and why we're here?
More than happy to. Thanks very much, guys. Really, if I had to put down what Wiise is and what our mission statement is that we want to be able to bring enterprise-level capabilities and functionality to SMEs that can't afford a six-figure implementation and transition cost to be able to bring this software in. Wiise really is, in a way, being able to combine both your financials and your operational systems and accounting for those systems into the one spot so you have a source of truth. Really, the way that we try and do this is that we understood this could not be just done by one software or one division. So Wiise was actually made from a strategic partnership between KPMG, the Commonwealth Bank, and Microsoft. The whole idea there is that they were able to leverage the already existing cloud accounting capabilities out there regarding to banking integrations and available to all banks. And they tried to make it available through Wiise so that you can jump into one system and complete your accounting, complete your cash management, complete your inventory as well as warehousing, as we'll talk about today. And even then, the key idea here is that it's tailored for Australia with the payroll, with everything that you're going to be seeing, is that it's not a system meant for America, not a system meant for Europe, even though it has those capabilities. What you see within Wiise is meant for Australia. That being said, there's a couple of different ways that it's made ideal for those systems. One, Maya, is key, the fact that it's Aussie made. The fact that it is supported by industry experts, isn't that right?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the important things that businesses need to note is when you're looking at global type of ERP software, a lot of the time it isn't tailored for the Australian market, and so you need to spend a lot of customization and money to make it relevant. The chart of accounts, the bank feeds, the single touch payroll integration, all these things that need to be taken into consideration. But yeah, there are other things as well, like Chris, the Microsoft Office functionality, which we're seeing benefit a lot of customers today just by cutting back, processes that used to take an hour to 15 minutes. Give us a bit more. Are you showing that in the demo? Or?
Oh, no. But you're 100% right. People that are using Microsoft 365 today want to be able to treat their accounting solution as, let's just say, the exact same point. The idea here is that Wiise really is then the accounting and operational solution that is connected and synchronized and natively integrated with the Microsoft 365 suite. And the good news there is that this doesn't come with an additional cost. This is all out of the box, just as Maya said. The main thing about this is that we want this to be available for our customers so they can just get on with their day-to-day. There are a number of different customers out there that have been able to utilize this. And there are plenty of examples out in the market of people that have utilized us for both the finances, operations, and day-to-day. Maya, I think as well as the examples of types of businesses that we have here, we've got a couple customer examples. Is that right?
Yeah, we just wanted to show a quick slide. We work with all different types of industries. So, whether you're not-for-profit or manufacturer, wholesale, distribution, you might just have inventory or you're doing assembly, even services, so financial services and service-based businesses. But where we're really strong is in I'd say wholesale distribution and manufacturing. And so some of the customer examples that we wanted to show you today is around the ways that these particular businesses were able to pivot. So, for example, Pro Seafoods, they were predominantly using MyOb, AccountRight at the time and multiple spreadsheets for their inventory, and they couldn't really get visibility across, how their finances relate to the inventory and vice versa. And they were spending a lot of their time on manual processes, and they're one of the customers that spent an hour to do a sales order, which now has been cut down to 15 minutes. But what has happened since then, since they've implemented Wiise, it's meant that they no longer need to spend tedious amounts of time on rekeying data and information. It's a single upload that they do into Wiise, and it's quite streamlined. That they've had 2 full-time admin people that predominantly just focus solely on rekeying information and processing sales orders, and they've been able to put those 2 roles into areas of growth for the business. And so one is now in PR and marketing, the other is focusing on full-time sales. And since then they've grown. I think they had 30 vendors, now they're up to 150 vendors in a year, and they're now looking at supermarket chains. So I think it's a great story to bring up, because it just shows sometimes we get bogged down in the day-to-day where our job is meant to be, this manual rekeying of information, where if you do leverage technology, you can save that time back to invest in areas of the business that you can improve on. So things like your product, looking at different things that you can sell, like who are your best customers in doing campaigns. And so it's a great story to highlight. And then we've got the other 2, and I'm just conscious of time, Chris, because I know we want to show a bit of Wiise, but Stuck On You were able to pivot by bringing in the school packages into families and things that they could work together on while parents and children were at home. And 5 Senses coffee distributor, they were able to set up an e-commerce easily, do that and pretty much continue the operation. So awesome. Just wanted to highlight some of those, and we will share some of these case studies with you guys at the end so that you can really understand, what their challenges were and how Wiise has been able to help drive these outcomes. Excellent. So Chris, the snazzy part of it, take us through the Wiise demo.
That is definitely my quote for the day, the snazzy part of it. I'm going to put that on my board. That is excellent. Really, I guess there are a whole suite of features and functionalities and benefits within Wiise that we could really talk about today. But because of our topic and because of our audience, I want to be able to talk about 3 key components that really are aimed at solving a number of the issues that Caroline and Maya talked about: supply planning within the system, as well as the warehouse management and landed costing. To begin with, when it comes to supply planning, and I'm going to jump into product now because I think we've been in a slide deck for a long enough time, is the inventory management component of the system. For instance, inventory control, availability, and overall management within Wiise is aimed at being a key pillar. Here you can see a clear list of an inventory, and it's made to emulate the familiar looking design of an Excel spreadsheet, so it isn't a foreign system for you to adapt to. You can see detail against your items just by highlighting them. And as well as that, we can see this information in any which way we want to consume. That being said, when it comes to supply planning, there are a certain level of detail that we have to incorporate against our inventory. For instance, one of my favorite items in my example database, my Athens desk. Right now, I've got 11 of this item showing up within my inventory list. But you can see here, if I pivot down, that I have 13 of this item on sales orders and I have 17 on purchase orders. All this information is live, so I don't have to update, I don't have to rekey. And with that, we understand that item availability is a key component of here. So I can see item availability by a number of different metrics, whether it is by period. So great, I've got 13 and 17 of these goods committed. What is the date that that actually hits my inventory levels? Everything that you're seeing right now as well isn't just a static figure. I can drill down, see for my gross requirement, whether it's assembly, so actual production or assembly that's requiring those goods, or if it is a sales line and a sales document itself. Drill down and see that source level of information. The idea with Wiise is that we want to surface data and insights for you, but we wanted to make it actionable as well. That being said, for supply planning, you can have inbuilt logistics put into the system. Right here, you can see reordering policies, whether it is that you want to maintain a ceiling level of inventory at one location, multiple locations, and specifically at different locations. You can use fixed reordering quantities, so I'm just going to purchase 50 batches of this desk and I'm going to maintain them at a certain point to be reordered. Have safety lead times and quantities incorporated as well. While all of this can lead to the simple ways that we can purchase the goods, one key thing is that we want to make bulk processing very streamlined for yourselves. So I have all these parameters within my system. Using what we would call the requisition worksheet, I can bulk produce purchase order suggestions and due date schedules for requisitioning, as you can see here. I could see the items that I've chosen, and based on those minimums and maximum, sales order commitments and gross requirements, for new purchase orders to be suggested to be made. And the key thing here, as you can see as well, just as Caroline said, they can also be adjusting. For instance, based off demand, they can be cancelled, they can be rescheduled, their quantities can be changed, all based off the parameters you have in the system. And just as she said, when it came to supply chain breakdown, which is a key point, that was number 5, if you guys remember at the very beginning, that's a key issue that we found during COVID. Being able to change your vendors, choose vendors based on lead time calculations and that level of data, people are able to adjust live within Wiise. But I don't want to get bogged down into one key component. There's a much more wealth of information regarding supply planning if you just want to join to our website. Now that just talked about some of the key details that we have within the planning capabilities of being able to meet supply with demand. Naturally, another key component of this is being able to work in the warehouse. Just as Caroline said, people had to manually go in, paper handle. The idea with Wiise, if Maya, I'm going to be tricky now and I'm going to share a different desktop, so you must forgive me. Yep, and let's just make sure I'm sharing the right thing. That always does help. So being able to work in a warehouse naturally means you have to have the people in the warehouse connected to your system. Right here is an example of how Wiise is platform agnostic. With your subscription, you can access it on any internet browser on any computer, as you saw before. Now I'm accessing it as if I'm on an iPad. And forgive me for my camera, I'm going to get nice and close. I can complete stock takes. I can assign work to other team members. I can even, for instance, jump in, view what I'm due to put on to shipments, click onto that information, grab those goods from a specific section of my warehouse or specific sections of multiple orders to one shipment and send that off. The whole idea here is that I'm able to work without having to interact with other people and actually stay safe, but as well as that, I'm able to work live within the system. This can go with approvals, it can go for stock takes. The whole idea here is that the warehousing capabilities within Wiise are made to be scalable as well. You could have simple warehouse capabilities like this, where I need to complete stock takes, or I can ship off goods, let's say just for one shipment. The other side is if I change my ID here from order to order, and if I go to using the more advanced warehousing available within Wiise, I can then have multiple orders to my customer included within one shipment and accounted for as such. I could have direct picks and put away. So in that situation, the system is telling me where in my warehouse to grab goods for production, grab goods for shipments, where to put away goods for long storage or for cycle counting. The idea there is that everything is streamlined, made visible, and even though I'm sharing my screen right now, you can see it's quite fast. That being said, there is the other side of this, and I am going to go back to sharing the other screen, Maya, so I'm going to play around a second, just to keep you on your toes.
All good.
There we go. Warehouse management is made so that it can be as simple as managing the goods in the back of your shop all the way to having a warehouse, multiple warehouses, and having a warehouse production flow. The other side that we always want to incorporate, and Caroline did point out, is a key factor is costing. So right here, I can see that my Athens desk that we have some goods coming in for has a unit cost. With that as well, we can also see that it has what we call a landed cost. So Wiise tries to recognize that freight, duty, and cartage need to be apportioned against the goods and will need to be calculated so we can incorporate landed costing within the system. And actually, there are two sides to this. I'm only going to take one more second, Maya, to show this. But there is the one side where you have goods coming in from overseas and you need to manage those goods coming in. So we can track those shipments. We can manage those goods. And as you can see here, have multiple purchase orders associated, whether we're tracking this by air, by sea, by freight, clearance. And even then, if I wanted to be able to say that all these goods were due to come on the 26th, and I'm not saying that shipments ever get delayed, but let's just say in a parallel universe where things go wrong on seas and things get delayed a couple of weeks, I could then update these purchase orders. Let's just put that to the 30th. Say that they were delayed by 4 days, and then all of the purchase orders will be adjusted accordingly. With that, naturally, all of this can translate to different freight, duty, or cartage costs to your goods. So what we do within the system is we allow that once you receive that invoice from your shipping supplier, if I go down to mine, who's called electronics, we can then take their specific expense. In this example, let's say that I took on expense of freight and that cost was $10,000 for freight. We can then have it calculate based on volume, weight, amount, duty. And as I give you a preview here, we can then take the multiple lines from that shipment and apportion that $10,000 across those different goods. It'll do a little calculation before I process this document. And if I look at the value entries, I can see how that 10,000 now is apportioned separately based on their amounts, weights, duties, or cartages, or volumes. And you can see there the actuals translating to their new landed cost. This is all really a very long-winded way of saying that the system can account for your landed costing, regardless of whatever costing method you have, whether it's FIFO, average, specific, or standard. And I do know technically LIFO is illegal in Australia, but it's available. But that way we can then apportion those costs as they come into your warehouse or even directly to your customer as a drop shipment. There's many different ways that we're looking to solve these challenges for our customers, but really these are just some key ways that we've talked about today, and we're more than happy to go in detail about other ways if you want to join our website or reach out to us through the website. That being said, let's get to brass tacks. How much does it cost? Everything that we've talked about and more is all available within Wiise out of the box, whether it is the finance or the operations side. And there is much more coming, isn't there, Mayor, on our roadmap?
Yes, exciting.
We've got, for one, naturally more e-commerce solutions coming out available to you, but also scanning, EDI, expense management. To give you a quick glimpse of the costs, everything that we've talked about today would be available within the business edition, our medium offering that includes warehousing, whether it's basic or advanced. If you did manufacturing and needed a forecast for your production plan that you manage within your wholesale distribution, you would then be accounting for our premium edition. The key thing here is that we're discounting all the joining fees against all of these editions, and we do have a migration service. If you're on an on-premise solution of Microsoft and you're looking to basically go to the cloud, we have a service that can basically take you from there and move you up. That being said, this is your quick glimpse of the subscription costs. There's naturally a cost to be transitioned, set up, and trained on all of this. Wiise uses a partner network to be able to take all of this and basically guide you and hold your hand through the process. And we naturally try and set your expectations correctly at the beginning. So we even have a fixed scope methodology that they all utilize. And you can see here a way to understand how long that process would take based on your requirements. That being said, we've now got a couple minutes. So Maya, should we go ahead and look at some of those questions? I've got a couple in front of me. Do you have a couple?
Yeah. We've got one from Nick. So Nick has said, hi, great conversation. Are you hearing overseas suppliers requesting more letters of credit as a result of less uncertainty around buyer credit worthiness as a result of COVID?
Yeah, good question.
Caroline.
Yeah, certainly with the majority of the businesses that KPMG works with, we haven't seen much of that. I think their relationships that they have with their vendors is really strong, and I think also the benefit of having the government grants and tax incentives and things like that have helped the businesses that we work with trade through and actually continue to pay their suppliers, even the overseas ones. So that's certainly been something that's been really positive. So yeah, I haven't seen much in the way of those requests increasing for overseas suppliers for the businesses that we work with.
Wonderful. Chris, what do you have on your end?
I've got a couple of questions just regarding, for one, how long Wiise has been in market. So Wiise has been in market for a number of years and has a wide customer base, but also has partner networks across all the states. So yes, even if you're in Tasmania, we have local partners that can assist you. I only have one more question. Sorry, I was going to expand it.
Yeah.
And the questions regarding to licenses. So yes, those prices you saw were the full licenses if you want to do everything and anything under the sun in the system. There's also a team member license for approvals. And if you are simply someone using, let's say, a stock taker or a shop front or a technician, there's a device license. So the multiple people can log into the same computer through their different Microsoft 365 licenses and use the system. And yes, sorry, I did see that question too. Yes, the system does also have payroll that does have Australian awards, fully tailored for Australia.
Awesome. Look, I think we're smack bang, 2 minutes over our time, but thank you guys so much. I really hope that the discussion was interesting and also gave you a bit of a glimpse as to how, what businesses need to think about today and how we can help. So please do get in touch with us. We're happy to have a consultation with you to talk about whether it's your business or any of your processes, what you're using today, could you actually improve on. We're all ears. So appreciate it.
Yep, thank you very much, everybody, for your time.
Thanks.
Hope you had fun seeing what we had to show today. Please feel free to visit the website or email hello@Wiise.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.